Good to have everybody with us. We're fired up today because it's Hospital Week here in Virginia and nationally. I love Hospital Week. To celebrate, we're doing our show right here from the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association. Their offices right outside of Richmond. Now, our hospitals here in Virginia, they're open 24/7, 365, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, doesn't matter. They're open to serve you, providing healthcare access to people in need. They're also economic cornerstones of the community. They provide jobs and services and all kinds of good things. That's why I love Virginia's hospitals, and they do such a good job. Now, you probably don't know this, but they've directly provided here in Virginia 126,000 good-paying jobs with payroll and benefits of, get this, $8.5 billion, that's with a B, and contributed $38 billion to the state economy in 2015. That's why we're fired up. And by the way, let me just throw this out there. I am opposed to any changes in the COPN, which is the Certificate of Public Need, because if you do that, you get a white paper from the Heritage Foundation, who's being funded by the medical companies that want to come in and poach the most profitable services and screw hospitals in rural areas, right? I just tell you the truth. I'm opposed to it. Just let me toss that out there. Now, more information, VHHA.com, or ISupportVirginiaHospitals.com. ISupportVirginiaHospitals.com to learn more about Hospital Week, which we're celebrating. Now, coming in here live in our studio at VHHA to help me celebrate Virginia Hospital Week, none other than former two-term Lieutenant Governor, almost Governor, Bill Bolling. We both have something in common. We were screwed by the cooch. Bill, good to have you with us.
Good morning, John. Boy, that's a way to start.
Screwed by the cooch. The worst 7 days of my life was when we went to Cleveland, and I was appointed the floor manager of the Mid-Atlantic area and Virginia for the Trump campaign. And we went to Cleveland. My wife and I had to go early because Cuccinelli was there trying to change the rules. No matter what they said, what they were trying to do was unbound the delegates, and they had this concocted, grandiose vision that if they could just unbind the delegates, that everybody would abandon Trump and vote for Cruz, not knowing that, we had just an overwhelming majority of Trump delegates there. So I had to fight this guy for 7 days. I couldn't have fun. All I did was fight him every day in rules. Of course, we kicked his butt, but he's pretty relentless. And he thinks he's like, the convention wizard of all time. And then my job on the floor was I had to shadow him. So as he went and talked to media, I had to go behind him and then give our side. It's like I couldn't wait to get out of there. So
well, welcome to my world. That's all. That's all I had to say about that. Welcome to my world. Hey, I was really interested in those statistics that you were reading earlier about the number of people employed by Virginia hospitals. When I was my second term as lieutenant governor, when I served as Governor McDonnell's chief jobs creation officer, every community that I traveled to across Virginia, when you talk to them about who are the leading employers in your community, number one, number two was usually the local healthcare facility, the hospital, the nursing home, the assisted living center. So those just aren't numbers. It's true. As you travel across the state, and almost every community across Virginia, certainly one of, if not the largest employer, are Virginia hospitals. Those were good statistics and much more fun to talk about than the former subject.
Former subject. Well, let's talk about going forward. That was a past, right? The past is a past. Hey, we got Bill. I was so excited to have you on today when I found out you could make it, because I love your unabashed forthrightness and candor. And we got all kinds of races going on, so I got to get your take on them all. Let's start with governor. Let's start with the Republican side. Three candidates: Ed Gillespie, Senator Frank Wagner, and crazy Corey Stewart. That's just my narrative. What do you make of it?
Well, I think Ed Gillespie is going to be the Republican nominee. In the last few election cycles, if you've watched them closely, you get to a point where you stop having any confidence in polling data. But if you look at the polling data in almost all the polls that have been done on the Republican side, Ed Gillespie 2-1, 3-1 over his competitors. So I think Ed Gillespie is going to be the Republican nominee for governor. The excitement, the interest is, of course, on the Democratic side, where the most recent poll, Washington Post poll just earlier this week, had Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam and his challenger, Bernie Sanders type challenger from the far left wing of the Democratic Party, Tom Perriello, running neck and neck for the Democratic nomination.
So, not good for Lieutenant Governor. They could have disputed some of these earlier polls, but when you get a Washington Post poll that comes out that knows a little bit about Virginia, and they're tied at this juncture, 45 days out now, and Perriello's got enough money in the bank. I mean, he's not going to go toe-to-toe, but he'll go foot-to-toe. I mean, he's got enough money that he's continuing the race to be competitive on TV. He's going to go negative, I believe. I don't know. I've been saying it for months. I think Perriello's going to win.
Yeah, it's a tough race for Lieutenant Governor Northam, and it is kind of an interesting analogy in what's going on in the Democratic primary in 2017 and what went on in the Republican primary in 2013. Or at least the Republican nominating process in 2013. Timing in politics is everything. And the Republican process in 13 came along at a time when all of the energy was on the farther right wing of the party, the Tea Party. That's what Ken Cuccinelli at the time used to seize control of the state central committee, change the method of nomination, effectively drove us out of that race. You almost see the same thing in reverse now. All the energy in the Democratic Party is in the far left wing of the Democratic Party. It's the Bernie Sanders wing, the Elizabeth Warren wing. Ironically, both of whom have endorsed Tom Perriello. And Lieutenant Governor Northam kind of finds himself in the same position that I found myself in 4 years ago. The party has kind of shifted underneath him. And, timing's everything. And that race did not come along at a good time for me. This race didn't come along at a good time for him. And I think you're right. I think he's very vulnerable. Could be a close race, but the energy within the Democratic Party certainly would seem to be more with the candidate who represents the far left wing, and that's Perriello.
Here's what I don't like about the prospects of the Northam campaign. They keep telling me turnout is going to be low, our people are going to show up. Turnout's low, our people show, right? You know what? That's a very dangerous strategy. I mean, when the strategy is if nobody comes, we win, that's not a very good. And I was telling somebody the other day on the phone, Bill, that I was co-chair and helped run the Super Tuesday primary victory in Virginia for Trump, which I really thought was one of the biggest victories on Super Tuesday we had because it really knocked out Rubio, who spent $2.5 million in the final 2 weeks trying to win the state. And they were saying the same thing. Turnout is going to be low and Rubio's going to win, right? Well, turnout was high and we kicked their butt. So that strategy, when you're hoping the only way you win is by people staying home, I just don't think that bodes well.
Well, and the truth is, look, Ralph Northam is a dear friend of mine. He's a good, solid guy, but he is much more of a moderate Democrat. Now, he's trying to position himself now by attaching himself to some more liberal Democratic issues because he has to in this Democratic primary. But he is much more of a moderate Democrat. And in a Democratic primary, you have to ask yourself, where's the energy? Is the energy with the moderate Democrats? Is the energy with, the Bernie Sanders wing of the party? Truthfully, and I think you even saw this in the 2012 presidential primary, the energy, or 2016 presidential primary, the energy is in the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. That does not help Ralph Northam. So I don't know what the turnout will be. I expect the turnout will be relatively high for a gubernatorial primary. And if the energy does drive turnout among the more liberal Democrats, they may well be looking for a candidate like Tom Perriello,
a firebrand,
as opposed to a candidate like Ralph Northam.
Yeah, and I think it's much more comfortable for Perriello to run the very progressive, anti-Trump, burn the house down campaign than Northam can. And
I think those are the things he believes in, by the way.
Right.
I mean, I think if you look at Tom Perriello's background, he is a very liberal, very progressive Democrat, does very much identify more with those Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren issues. So, and he's not trying to make himself look like he's far left. He is in truth far left.
All right, so make a prediction.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I'm going to say Northam wins, close race. That may be more wishful thinking than anything, but I think it's going to be a really tight race on the Democratic side. That's the one to watch on Election Day.
All right, I'm going with Perriello in that one. So we'll bet dinner, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Good, because I'm not shy.
A place of the loser's choice, just to make sure it doesn't get too out of hand.
Place of the loser's choice. Okay, just not Krispy Kreme. All right.
No, it won't be Krispy Kreme.
Okay, let's get to the Republican LG race. We just had Glenn Davis on today. I have Joe Vogel as the clear front runner in this, and Senator Reeves also in the race. What do you see there?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Joe Vogel is the clear front runner. I think it's tougher to call the down ticket races because there's less attention. There's less polling data in those races. But everything I'm seeing and everything I'm hearing makes me think that Joe Vogel probably is in the front of that race. I think Senator Reeves has frankly hurt himself in this campaign with some of the tactics and strategies that he's chosen to unfold. I know Bryce Reeves, served with him for a number of years. He's a good guy. I like him a lot, but I've been disappointed with the nature of the campaign that he ran. Probably the guy in that race, frankly, that's been most interesting to me has been Glenn Davis. He's a nice guy, I think a very capable guy, and he's run a very interesting kind of positive campaign. I think he's made a name for himself, maybe positioned himself to do some things in the future within the Republican Party. But I think Joe Vogel probably wins that nomination. I am confident in saying that John Adams will be the Republican nominee for Attorney General. I think he's the only candidate. That one I'm confident about.
On the ballot. We won't bet that one, but we're in agreement. I think right now Vogel's the favorite. And if I had to predict today, I would say that she's going to win. I think Glenn Davis will finish second. He'll beat Reeves, and I think he's got a great future. But
agreed.
I'll just say this. If I'm sitting there on election night, and by the way, we will have live election night coverage. We'll be at the Gillespie Republican headquarters. We will have live election night coverage on June 13th, 6 to midnight, with my co-anchor Mike Watson. But if Davis were to win, I wouldn't fall off my chair. I wouldn't be shocked. But I think I've got Vogel as the favorite right now, so we're in agreement on that one. All right, let's get to Lieutenant Governor on the Democratic side. Now, it's interesting, Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling, because you won a race as Lieutenant Governor on the down ballot while losing the top ballot, right? Very unique situation. So let's get to the Democratic side. Three candidates, Gene Rossi, Susan Platt, former Chief of Staff for Joe Biden, and Justin Fairfax ran for Attorney General 2013. What do you see there?
Yeah, it's an interesting race, probably one that's a little bit tough to call. You've got two former federal prosecutors in that race, in Rossi and Justin Fairfax, both of whom have run aggressive campaigns. I think Platt is probably the favorite in that race. I think she's identified as being a much like we just talked about at the top of the ticket, more of a true kind of liberal believer, if you will. Her background more as an activist within the Democratic Party. I think she's probably the front runner in that race. I haven't followed it as closely as I've followed some of the other ones, but if I had to put down a marker on that, I'd probably say Platt is in the lead.
All right. I think Fairfax is going to win. So we differ on that. So it's going to be an interesting night.
And that would not surprise me. When that race started, I felt Fairfax was probably the favorite.
Right.
Platt seems to have gotten some traction,
yes.
But that one wouldn't surprise
Could go either
me.
Way.
But there's a month left to go. Who knows what happens in the last month?
Right. And we'll both go with Herring as the Attorney General nominee.
I think that one we can bet on as well.
All right. How many seats, if any, do the Democrats gain in the House?
Well, that's not many. Frankly, I think the House, because of partisan gerrymandering, is such these days that most of those Republican seats are safely Republican. Most of the Democratic seats are safely Democrat. If you've got 100 seats in the House of Delegates, maybe you're going to have 6, 8, 10 at the most of those that are truly competitive races. If the Democrats can split those, it's a good day for them. So what do they pick up? 3, 4, best day, 5 seats. I don't think you're going to see a lot of change in the House of Delegates.
Democrats +3.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable
+3.
I think that's a reasonable estimate.
There's 2 seats are definitely going to win. I'm not going to point them out right now. They got another one. I think they're way ahead. They're not going to lose any, I don't believe. So I see Dem +3. Okay, so I want to ask this. We've got about 3 minutes. Bill, you won as lieutenant governor when the top of the ticket lost, right? That's a very unique situation. How'd you do that, and can that be, in the environment we have today, can that ever be repeated?
Well, I think it can be. I think it is unusual. Normally, the top of the ticket coattails are sufficient to kind of carry down throughout the race. My race in 2005 when I won, although Jerry Kilgore at the time lost that race to Tim Kaine, was a little bit different in that I was running against an opponent that was pretty far outside the mainstream of Virginia politics at the time, a lady by the name of Leslie Byrne. Throughout that race, I had a wider margin over her than Kaine had over Kilgore, or at the time that Bob McDonnell had over Creed Eads. And if you remember, on election night, Kaine won the governorship fairly comfortably. I won the lieutenant governor's race by 3 or 4 points, and then McDonnell ended up winning in a recount process. So I had just a little bit of a bigger margin. Probably had as much to do with my opponent as it did with me, but unusual. Generally in Virginia, if you've got a Democrat at the top of the ticket, you're going to have a Democratic lieutenant governor. Attorney general can change. Republicans tend to run a little stronger there because of the attachment that people make to attorney general with law and order type issues, and that's a strength for Republicans. So you could see something like that repeated, but it's hard to do. And look, I'm an Ed Gillespie guy. I think Ed's going to be a great candidate for the Republican Party. I think he'd make a great governor for Virginia. I'm going to be out there doing everything I can do to help promote Ed Gillespie's campaign and the rest of the Republican ticket. But the thing Republicans need to keep in mind in this race, regardless of who the Democratic nominee is, Virginia is definitely trending blue in these top of the ticket statewide races. Democrats have won 9 of the last 10. So no matter who, 8 in a row. So no matter, have all 5 statewide offices right now. So no matter who the nominee is, that's the benefit that the Democrats have. And then what impact will the whole national mood have in Virginia?
Don't know.
It's unpredictable right now. So it's going to be a tough race.
I got a question here from Don in Norfolk. Says, please ask Lieutenant Governor Bill if he'll give any thought for U.S. Senate in 2018.
No.
Oh, thank you. That's a very cogent answer.
You and I have talked about this before. I had the privilege of representing the people of Virginia in state and local government for 22 years. I would not change it. It's a great experience in life, but I'm under no hurry to repeat it. I would not rule out at some point in the future doing something more in a public policy area. But when I stepped out of partisan political life back in 2012 and 13, I stepped out, and I have no desire to step back in.
Maybe if Ed Gillespie wins, maybe you'll end up in the cabinet.
Well, we'll see. Ed's a good friend, and I certainly am open to helping him in any way I can.
I can see him doing
but we'll see. I love public policy. I'll be 60 years old in about a month.
You don't look 60.
So I probably got one more gig left in me before I, as George Strait would say, I'd be the cowboy that rides away.
One more gig. All right, Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling, we're going to end on that, saying he's got one more gig left in him.